Hi, greetings from National Association of Palliative Care for Ayush and Integrative Medicine. I am Dr. Piyush Gupta, Secretary and Principal Executive Officer of Cancer Aid Society and Secretary of National Association of Palliative Care for Ayush and Integrative Medicine. Talking of death is considered to be a taboo. It is weird. We think that it brings bad luck and it is morbid. But believe me friends, death is a surety which is going to come to us. There are no doubts in anyone's mind about it. So, why not? Talking of death should be a part of life. Why we need to talk about our fear of death? Life asked death, why do people love me but hate you? Death responded, because you are a beautiful lie and I am a painful truth. So, this is very important to remember that this truth all of us are going to face someday. Most people do not like to think or talk about death, even though it is inevitable that every one of us will die. Dread, anxiety and fear still surrounds death. We try to avoid thinking about it, but in doing so we actually affect our mental and physical health negatively more than we know. But when it starts interfering with how to live life, death anxiety can be perfectly normal. The fear of the unknown and what happens afterwards is a legitimate concern. It becomes problematic. For people who do not find the right coping methods, it is possible for all that anxiety to cause mental pain and stress. Separation anxiety disorder often involves excessive fear of losing people important such as parents through accidents or death. Compulsive checkers repeatedly check power switches, gas stoves and locks in an attempt to prevent harm or death. Compulsive hand washers often fear contracting chronic and life-threatening diseases. Fear of dying from a heart attack is often the cause of frequent doctor visits for panic disorder. Individuals with somatic symptom disorders engage in frequent requests for medical tests and body scanning to identify serious illness. Specific phobias involve excessive fear of heights, spiders, snakes and blood. Let us talk about death over coffee. Talking about death is Karen Van Dyke's life work. In addition to being a professional end of life consultant working with elders in assisted living and memory care communities, Van Dyke hosted San Diego's first Death Cafe in 2013. Death cafes serve as friendly, welcoming and comfortable surroundings for those who want to talk openly about death. Many are in actual cafes or restaurants where people eat and drink together. Death cafe's purpose is to lighten the load of the mystery of what your experience may or may not be, says Van Dyke. I definitely do life differently now, more in the moment, and I am much more specific about where I want to put my energy. And that is a direct correlation about being able to talk about death with freedom. This expression of death is far healthier than other habits and actions which may have adopted in order to avoid death. Watching television, drinking alcohol, smoking and shopping. What if these were just distractions and habits we engage in to avoid thinking about death? What if Sheldon Solomon, professor of psychology at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York, According to Sheldon Solomon, professor of psychology at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs, New York, using these behaviors as distractions isn't a foreign concept, because death is such an unwelcome topic for most people. We immediately try to get rid of it out of our head by doing things to distract ourselves, says Solomon. His research suggests that the fear of death can set off reactions, habits and behaviors that seem normal. To counter these behaviors, having a healthy approach and perspective of death could be a start. Death cafes have sprung up all over the world. John Underwood and Sue Barsky-Reed founded death cafes in London in 2011 with the goal of making discussions about death less daunting by presenting them in socially friendly environments. In 2012, Lizzie Miles brought the first death cafe in US to Columbus, Ohio. It's clear a growing number of people want to speak frankly about death. What they also need is a safe and inviting space which Death Cafe may provide. What's the history of death or the elephant in the room? Maybe it's the fear of the word that gives it the power. Caroline Lloyd, who founded the first death cafe in Dublin, says with legacy of Catholicism in Ireland, most death rituals are centered around the church and its long-standing traditions such as funerals and religious ceremonies. A notion some Catholics also believe in was that knowing names of demons was a way of taking away their power. What if in today's world we could use that approach to death? Instead of saying euphemisms like crossed over, passed away or moved on and distancing ourselves from death, why don't we embrace it? In America we visit graves, but that's not what everyone wants, says Van Dyke. People want to speak openly about their fear of death, their experiences of being terminally ill, witnessing the death of a loved one and other topics. The Death Cafe in Dublin is held in a pub, Irish style, but no one gets drunk when these sobering conversations take place. Sure, they might have a pint or even tea, but the folks in the pub, young, old, women and men, rural and urban, are serious when it comes to addressing death. They also have fun as well. Laughter is a part of it, adds Lloyd, who will soon be hosting her fourth death cafe in Ireland's capital city. It's clear these cafes are doing good work. It's still very much what the community wants, says Van Dyke, and I have become little more at peace that death is going to happen after doing this for such a long time. There are now 22 death cafe hosts in San Diego, all mentored by Van Dyke and with the group sharing best practices. How to bring the conversation of death home? While death cafes are still relatively new in US, many other cultures have long-standing positive rituals around death and dying. Rev. Terry Daniel, MACT, has a certificate in death, dying and bereavement, ADEC, etc. She is also the founder of Death Awareness Institute and the Afterlife Conference. Daniel is experienced in using shamanic rituals of indigenous cultures to help heal people by moving the energy of trauma and loss out of physical body. She has studied death rituals in other cultures as well. In China, family members assemble altars to recently deceased relatives. These might contain flowers, photos, candles and even food. They leave these altars up for at least a year, sometimes forever. So, the soul of those who have departed are with them every day. Death isn't an afterthought or a fear, it's an everyday reminder. Daniel cites an Islamic ritual as another example. If a person sees a funeral procession, they must follow it for 40 steps to stop and recognize the importance of death. She also mentions how Hinduism and Buddhism as religions and attending cultures teach and understand the importance of death and preparation for death as a path of enlightenment, instead of regarding death with fear and anxiety. So, here are some of the references which may be beneficial for your further studies. Thank you.